Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Value of Everything. Now, this one is about that really nuisance thing that we have to handle in our lives every once in a while, namely pain. So, what is pain? So pain is basically a reflex response to a certain level of discomfort, which is really a preventative measure by the body to stop us from injuring ourselves any further and to ensure that we can stay alive and reproduce. I think that's my definition. I was looking for a dictionary definition, but then I just didn't have quite the time. Now, let me just get out of this horrible turn. There has been a little bit of philosophy around this matter, and if you could think of over time, a lot of people would have had to deal with an immense amount of pain. Men would be sent to war. There'll be ridiculous amounts of illness that would decimate waves of people, a city of people. There would be just think of like having in the old days. You can always think of like boils on your back, and well, even though I sometimes get spots nowadays, but you get all types of certain ailments, and you got to just walk around with that toothache all the time, and that's pretty annoying. It's a lot of suffering, which in some ways you could think to yourself, oh, is it really worth it? Is it what are we gaining from this body? If you're giving me this much pain and I can't even enjoy my life, why on earth is this happening? Especially for a bad tooth. So it's all. Let's start with in terms of pain. So the body over time had to evolve and give certain gradients to certain levels of pain. And if you could think of if you think of a map network, like a road network of your central nervous system through your body, you've got a lot of things which are very close to the brain, so the nerve systems, that place between your nose and your mouth. If you get a spot there, I think that's where a lot of that's where your face fused together when you were as a fetus. That place is extra sensitive. If you get a spot there and you want to pick it, it becomes intensely horrible, and it causes you to almost shiver with the amount of pain inside it. So there is certain parts of your body which are not necessarily to do with gradients of pure pain and like, oh, okay, so that place must be protected the most. It's more to do with how the body has been structured and built over time. Sometimes you will have a lot more nerve systems in some places than others, which react to a lot more pain. Also, in terms of pain, you're going to have certain areas which you use a hell of a lot, and it desensitizes to pain. So, for example, your hands over time can probably get a little bit more heat resistant compared to, say, that place behind your back where your kidneys sort of are. That place of skin is pretty sensitive. So there is certain levels of gradients of pain, and it's not necessarily to do with how important the organ is. But obviously that should really be the overriding factor. Obviously, the skin is the largest organ in your body, and it does need to be protected because that is your line of defense against the outside world of all the diseases and bacteria. You would pretty much bleed to death straight away, or you would perish in the amount of diseases that you would be inflicting on yourself. So you don't really want to take off your skin and start being this muscle man or skeleton man. It's not really a pretty sight unless you're working in a horror movie. Now, so we're seeing that over time the body's evolved a central nerve system, and some of it's pretty good, some of it's a little bit unnecessary, you would think. But there are very necessary points. We do know that some certain people that have there's a certain special medical word for it where you do not feel any pain. They have a lot of issues with pressure. So if they apply too much pressure to their body, so if you sit still in one spot for it's something ridiculous, not like even just an hour, you would get a ridiculous amount of pain, pressure spots. You may even get bruising just from sitting in one spot for a certain amount of place of time. You may have pins and needles as well. So there is that central nervous system to just keep your body rolling, just ensure that there's not too much pressure being applied to your body, and you need to be moving around. So that even things that you might think are just a little bit pointless, they serve slightly different causes than what you think of just like this major bleeding, I've been shot pain, in comparison to just pain that just feels just a little bit uncomfortable. What's the point of this little uncomfortable pain? But we can sort of perceive there are a definite purpose to a lot of things, but also there is some things in the way that we've had to evolve and become these big giant human beings from these single cellular structures. So it's all very interesting stuff in terms of where we are with pain. Now, I just would like to mention as well, there's not necessarily... So we do have, obviously, physical pain, and physical pain is fairly connected, and with our mental side of things. Also, we somebody who is suffering a intense amount of stress. I know it's, stress and grief and loss is a totally different sort of sensation. However, they are saying that there's a number of nerves in the stomach, and say if you feel under a lot of stress, the stomach does go under a lot of changes in terms of you can get stomach ulcers and you can get stomach cramps in heightened levels of stress. So there are certain connections between pain barriers from one side to the other. And even though you think that we're talking about something mental and something physical, there is interconnection there, and it's all being played within this central processor called your brain. So, and it's just looking at it objectively a little bit differently, but in essence, you could still state that this is a level of discomfort that you're experiencing. Depression obviously is a level of discomfort. You don't really want to be saddened for an extended period of time. However, so being sad for an extended period of time, being depressed all the time, could be pretty debilitating, and you wouldn't really want to be doing anything. So you're just like, oh my gosh, what's the purpose of this? Oh, I really need to turn off here. This is great. So, yeah, so if you're feeling depressed for an extended period of time and it's really debilitating you, you're just staying in bed, you're not moving outside of your bed, and you can't see the light of day, you're scared and petrified of meeting anybody out on the streets, that's really not going to be too helpful for you, and it will put you into a certain amount of a vicious cycle. And you could state to an extent that feeling this intense amount of pain can put you into what's the word? Just put you. It basically just draws you back. It draws you back, and really, if this depression wasn't really there, if you was I'm not 100% sure on the full ins and outs of the human body, but let's say that there is a full condition which is depression, and there is just generally a chemical balance in the brain which makes people just generally quite happy, and there is a chemical balance in the brain which generally makes people quite sad. Then I'm making an assumption there. Well, I'm not stating any facts there. Then it will be pretty much a bad draw there, where you would have this intense amount of pain that you're experiencing in life, and you're not actually enjoying life to its full potential. As if you was hypersensitive to all senses of pain, and you went through life experiencing a great deal of back pain and number of all different ailments that really weren't stopping you from doing things too much. Maybe just like a headache or things like that that were just debilitating. But really, if that headache just was removed, then you would be able to just live a normal life. So that there wouldn't be anything really. There isn't any major purpose for this. One of our great philosophers, the German one, the superhuman one, Friedrich Nietzsche, he had a debilitating illness, and I think that prevented him quite a lot, and potentially even changed his view on philosophy. If your perspective of the world changes quite rapidly if you are under a hell of a lot of suffering and pain all the time. It's not gonna make. Maybe Friedrich Nietzsche would have come up with some beautiful quotes of eminent joy about if you stare into the abyss, maybe the abyss would kiss you back. Like, you never know what kind of things could happen if he wasn't experiencing a ridiculous amount of pain. So yeah, we have to be quite wary of this fact, and there is a lot of nuances in terms of our pain and what's happening there, and it's something of life. And really, if we just removed all pain and only experienced pleasure, then there will be some ridiculous counterbalances which would occur straight away. Say if you had like the government saying, okay, well, we've got a new way of stopping all pain, so we've got a new way of stopping all poverty, and that will be the welfare system, well, the welfare system for pain. And let's see what things can be what beautiful things can be created by doing this removal of pain, and seeing what happens at that stage. Now, this is where we get into. I've read a little bit on some. I think it's a British philosopher named David Pearce. And he's into. He's made a big book in the 90s about potentially us moving towards a state of being pain-free, and that obviously gave me a lot of inspiration for this podcast itself. And he is more inclined to move. Well, he's looking at the transhumanism sort of state and how the human can change over time. So he has made, basically I just saw the brief part of his argument, but I just want to expand on that and see if there's anything new that I can add to this. So, and obviously if you feel there's any more things that you can add to this, then it'll be very interesting. Now, it's funny I should say you feel. If you think in terms of thoughts, let's just attack that one first. If you think in terms of thoughts, you feel things. There's a certain level where you have maybe a physical reaction to emotions. Say anger can make you feel very tense. Pleasure can make you feel very relaxed. There are physical nerve system feelings in terms of when you feel something or not. So it's kind of interesting how just our general emotions are intertwined with pain potentially. Or when I mention pain, I say nerve systems. But in terms of maybe where Dave Pearce is getting to, is he's potentially getting us to a state where we are eradicating pain and potentially only feeling pleasure. So there's a number of ways I think that was mentioned for doing this. Maybe changing our DNA structure before we're born, just to say, okay, well, lower that goddamn pain levels down, and maybe there is potentially we can just change our genetics just while we're in mid-flow. Maybe we can put little nanobots into our body which can sense that we're sending pain signals down our central nervous systems, and it can it can just counteract with those pain signals and disrupt them so that that is not felt. Maybe there could be a more intelligence based nanobot which can obviously give us that instant amount of pain where we burn our fingers and potentially could cause ourselves some long-term damage, so that we get that reflex action. So that reflex action is probably very important to us. And then maybe once the pain is incurred and you've burnt yourself, for example, and you're putting your hand under water, those nanobots can switch off that pain, but just say, but I don't know, maybe send a message to your mobile, just say, please keep your hand underwater for at least 10 minutes so that the burn can go away. That sounds pretty awesome in those terms, that you could minimize pain in those respects. Now, when we're talking about pain, we're talking about life as well, so it's fairly... Say if we get into trouble and we pick a fight with somebody, one of the things in any sort of fight or conflict that anybody's going to get into, no matter how big or tall or anything like that, nobody really wants to get punched squared in the face. Everybody's scared of it, and everyone's going to put up a guard. I don't think anybody, like if you spoke to any boxer or any fighter, nobody's going to say, yeah, I really love getting punched right in the middle of the face. If they do, then maybe they're probably going to have some certain types of mental issues. But in terms of doing stuff and being, what's the word, avoidant of getting ourselves into certain troubles and situations, like tapping the shoulder of this big guy in the pub and saying, look mate, you're out of line there, and then throwing yourself into a violent situation, this may be more... You may be more inclined to do that if you can switch off your nanobots and endure a certain amount of pain and get punched in the face and then still stand up and then carry on, and then this man thinks, whoa, this man is superhuman. He can keep on going, and I do not have the capability of just keep on going, even though this person's looks like he's pretty much over. He can just keep on getting up and carrying on fighting. But who knows what sort of damage is being done to the person who has switched off, who's got the nanobots to switch off the pain feeling. So you're putting yourself into an immense amount of danger by having this ability to shut down your pain. Say if you want to go dirt biking up mountainsides, you're probably going to be far more inclined to do that kind of stuff if you know that there's injuries are going to be very temporal and you can just shut it off, and then maybe you just might need to sit on the couch for a long time with a broken leg, but you really won't feel anything other than very instantly. And the body's got a certain amount of adrenaline and other pumps which can counteract instant pain straight away. It's more of like a shock element than anything else. So once that shock element, potentially like the nanobot can probably read that the intense pain is about to kick in at a certain point anyway, and then shut down before he gets to any state anyway. So that full amount of pain could be completely counteracted, and it would make you more inclined to do this kind of stuff. There is definite studies that people say that people that are more insensitive to pain have a shorter lifespan than the ones that are sensitive to pain. So pain is one of those margin factors in how you perceive your life and how you would like to look after your life and how precious you make your life. So it's interesting in those terms. Now, let's get back to transhumanism a bit more again. So I mentioned about nanobots, and that's fairly sophisticated stuff to send these little robots inside your body, these microbots inside your body to send counter signals down your nervous system and repair parts of your body. But it's not really that far out of the realms of possibility if you think of what's that really good inner space. Like the 80s movies have shown this. There's been loads of movies where you miniaturization, where you can go inside the body and go through all its canals and bloodstreams in the past. So that idea has been around for many years, and the fact that we are creating robots which are smaller and smaller and smaller, like there's atomic calculating computers now. The potential is there, and even though there might not be certain robots that go down the bloodstream, there could definitely be robots that could just be on the surface area and then maybe go inside, and all manner of things. So that potential is definitely there. Now, if we say that, let's go on to the cyborg idea, where over time our knees get very weak and brittle, and there's this LCA ligament that ruptures and all manner of things. Maybe there'll be a definite benefit with connecting. Well, I guess there's a definite benefit in, like, especially if you're investing in businesses. Make sure that you get into the businesses which can connect to central nervous systems, because that's where a lot of money is going to be, I guess, in the future. Especially if we get into this more of an android state. But over time, obviously, knee joints is very complicated. But if you could replace the bones with a certain alloy metal, which would be extremely hard wearing and light at the same time, that could be better than what the human body can produce. And if you could improve the nerve system endings to make it improve the movement of your leg, then you could have a fantastic couple of two pegs, which could probably potentially even move faster than what you would have normally. Probably at first the technology would be pretty crap, but over time it would improve to a standard that would be better than human. So those knee joints wouldn't feel any pain when you're playing soccer on the field. You would be getting incredibly better there. So your body is getting slowly replaced by parts which are better and more improved. And the important part here is that they're painless as well. So the leg, well, it doesn't really matter if your leg gets blown off, because you've got the full ability of just replacing it with something that's better and more useful. So there wouldn't be any sort of level of importance left for your legs after a while. And the purpose of you having any sort of pain sensors on those parts would be just like, okay, well, because I don't really need this anymore to walk around, we don't really need any pain points on these parts of my body. So yeah, just don't worry about the pain, and just worry about the function. Obviously, if maybe we can have a little bit of a survey or analytics just to say if one leg is not quite perfectly balanced when walking compared to the others, and we can just download that software and improve it, and just do some patch upgrades just to get the counterbalancing right and things like that, or the calibration right. But beyond that, the leg it's not going to serve any purpose for you for that alloy metal leg to shoot some pain sensors up your central spine cord to say to you, oh, by the way, your alloy leg has a little bit of a squeak or something like that. It just doesn't serve any purpose, especially when it's all replaceable. So that's an important thing about pain, obviously, as well, is the replaceability. Now, the nail is very replaceable, so you don't actually feel any pain well, you do feel pain on the skin part, which is exposed when the nail gets removed, but the actual nail itself obviously doesn't have any pain sensors. Your hair doesn't have any pain sensors to it, so there is certain parts of the body which is replaceable, and the body has obviously not decided to keep any nervous systems in those parts. Obviously it's not skin or it's not those body parts, but it's certainly interesting in those terms. You could have like teeth-like things on the end of your nails which do have nerve systems which could alarm to you when your teeth nails have broken off your hands, and that would be very beneficial for dentists because they would be making a lot more profit. But obviously it doesn't serve much of a purpose, so therefore we have replaceable body parts and we don't have any nerve systems to attach to these bits. Right. Now, as we approach, so the legs is obvious, a little bit more of an obvious one, because we think our legs are fairly simple things. They are actually quite complicated things, especially because we are bipedal. Being bipedal makes us ridiculously efficient in walking vast distances without consuming too much energy. Maybe that's probably it was quite a good useful tool when we was chasing animals over a long distance, and getting them to a state of exhaustion, until they would knacker out, and then we could just spear them or bat them or something like that, and then that food would become ours. Now, we're moving up to, so the legs are fairly complicated, and especially around the knee joints and the other joints. There's multiple little areas and movements and motor areas. And if you think of that little Japanese robot with a backpack on, I think it's taken them goddamn, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years of working out how to just get a very simple walk going on, and working out all the intricacies of counterbalance and things like that. And even though it can do like certain jigs and certain dance moves and things like that, it's still not really. It's not going to start playing a sports game anytime soon. So it's an immensely complicated feature. But if you could improve the way that our nervous system communicates with computers, then we have, and that data can be sent back and forth. You do have amazing potential there. Now we've replaced the legs. The legs are doing fine and dandy. They're nice alloy metal. We can hit them with any hard object, and it makes a nice little clink. But obviously, we look at our hands. Our hands are a ridiculous. Well, I think have got a lot more sensitivity. They have an immense amount of ability. We've sort of fine-tuned them over time, where they can do very subtle, tiny motor movements. You have seen in the past where people have certain disabilities where they haven't got their arms, the use of their arms. That skill can be transferred into the feet, and it's quite an interesting thing to see. But with our arms, there is just that level of increased motor skills. So I think as technology begins, maybe legs are fairly replaceable, but to get that really incredible, tiny, minute motor skills from the hands is going to be a little bit trickier to do. But I guess probably the distance of time, once they've worked out how to transfer signals over quite well and get all the tiny little minute readings from that, then it's going to improve gradually over time. So, okay, let's assume that we've conquered our hands now as well. We've managed to work out how to read those tiny motor movements. So all we've got now is our body organs and our head, And basically our limbs can be fully automated. We can blow them off. We can do all kinds of heroic things with our arms, and potentially we can obviously get super strength from our arms and our legs. There is the issue of energy, so we do still require energy to motor these body parts. So are we talking about battery packs that we would require, or are we going to be able to tap into our own bodily energies, which would be like the glucose sugar system, which is carried around our bloodstream? That would be fairly interesting if the body, the titanium legs can adapt and use that energy, because that obviously is the abundant source energy that's available to us. Or we're just going to have to charge up solar panels and use the sun's energy to get in a direct or indirect way to get our body parts moving. So it's very interesting in terms of energy sources when it comes to those parts, but we're talking about pain anyway, so I won't bother you with the pain of thinking about that just yet. So yeah, we've got the body, and potentially what we might be thinking about at some point is the skin. So the skin is potentially the next one that might be up. It's fairly cuttable and sliceable. You just need a sharp implement, and you can quite easily get through that skin and expose organs and pierce organs and things like that. So obviously our skull's fairly protected. We've got skin, and then we've got a skull around it, but around our rib cage you've got a lot of well, the rib cage obviously is a shielding mechanism anyway for the most important organs, but the lower part of the rib cage, just to keep our mobility around, there's a bit of a trade-off going there. We have a fair amount of organs exposed just to the intestines. I guess that can, I think I've heard if you rupture that, it can balloon out a little bit. But we potentially might think of just replacing skin. I think we're talking about aesthesics. I can't think of the word. Just the appearances of things. So if we're going to replace skin, we have to replace it with something that is probably quite similar to what we have already. So we may be able to. We've got to think ourselves as well, like where we can grow body parts. We might be able to grow artificial skin. Again, it still needs to tap into the bloodstream. It might not need to sweat anymore, but there's obviously the skin does a number of things as well. It helps with our cooling and other factors as well, pain sensitivity, nerve system. So if we're starting to slowly remove the skin, there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more complicated issues occurring than in comparison to replacing legs and arms and limbs and things like that. So it's very interesting in those terms once we start focusing on our skin. Now, organs are quite interesting. We obviously have we have motorized organs which are coming into place right now. We can replace our organs with some other body else's organs, which is very interesting. Quite sophisticated. So I can't say the words. Sophisticated moves forward in terms of our approach to medicine. I guess a lot of those movements forward were probably for very dangerous means, probably by the Nazis, and the Russians did a lot of this organ replacements in the past, which gave us a few jumps forward. But I guess there's a lot of immoral questions raised about that. But even so, we're quite advanced in that field, and we can quite easily replace hearts. Well, not quite easily, but we can replace hearts, kidneys, livers from one human to another, and we can potentially get pigs' organs now, I believe. Which I think one of the major issues is rejection. You can send out a lot of anti-rejection. I'm not sure what the word is, maybe hormones or something, and that can prevent the organ from not being rejected. And then obviously you can see that there's the heart, which is can be replaced by a mechanical heart and pump. So that is increasingly interesting in terms of central organ systems which can be replaced. Now it's very interesting in all of those terms. I guess that stomach and the nerve systems that connect between the brain and the stomach is probably going to be the last area which can really be changed over. But for all the other organ parts, that if you can find something that's going to work a lot more efficiently, give you statistical data, and improve your life and improve the quality of life and potentially give you life extension, then to be knocked out and to wake up and with a fair amount of soreness, but maybe the nanobots can prevent that soreness from happening in the first place, you'd be quite happy to just change all your internal organs over. Maybe the internal organs would be potentially quicker than the skin to be replaced. But now we're looking at your organs, your heart, all the livers and all the functionable parts have been changed over. Maybe your stomach and the things that convert energy would be more prized because we're still requiring the glucose and the energies to work. Maybe let's think about our body. We might be able to be a little bit more efficient in the way that we feel hunger for fats and sugars and things like that. Maybe we can put in certain nanobots that can make us feel full all the time, so that we decide on just eating lettuce leaves and highly nutritious things in comparison to picking up a nice Mars bar or something like that. So we might be able to fuel our bodies highly efficiently. Let's think we might need a totally different diet plan in comparison to what we did before. If we've got a lot less body parts, we require a lot less energy, or maybe even we require a lot more energy because of these body parts which might be more programmed to have faster skills and more strength, things like that. So you don't quite know what we might be on. We might be just on a high sugar diet. Who knows? Because of all this energy that we require. So we might even get to a point of using like a biofuel which fuels all our body parts. But the problem would be obviously that the brain requires the sugar and the glucose. So it would be interesting rather than just having two energy sources. It would be just important just to focus purely on the source that is being used by the human anyway. Now, so yeah, the subject is pain. I've gone quite through all the body parts and all those parts. So we're really getting to a state where all of our body parts are converting over, and we're pretty much we're getting to a state where our body is painless now. So we're not feeling pleasure. Maybe we like our sexual organs. Obviously, the sexual organs are quite handy for us, so that we might just keep a connection there. But maybe there might be suggestions that the sexual organs could be in our way somewhat. Maybe it's maybe those sexual impulses are preventing us from doing a very discipline-based things. So we might be able to stop those impulses and be very highly attuned people. Might be far better married partners, where we can switch on the sexual organs when we require it at the right time, be very faithful to our partners, and we might be able to certainly structure our lives a little bit better and not be impulsed and addicted and have these intense addictive ways, be inclined in that way just by the sexual impulse and addiction is quite linked to each other, as well as the impulse for eating as well. So you think of these nanobots which are holding us back on these parts. It's kind of interesting how the addiction part is is being quelled by the nanobots at the same time. So remember, this is my theory. I mean, we don't really quite know whether this nanobot can send counter signals for sexual impulses or counter signals for pain, but it's interesting elements which can change the makeup of the human itself to be slightly is going to be and obviously once we start to change all of these body parts, the question remains now: are we human anymore? Are we or are we something else? Are we ascending to something else? Now we may still have a biological brain and biological what's the word? A biological reproduction system, but I guess they're the ones which are going to stick around. But when it comes to all the other parts, then we're going to ourselves, maybe. Just say, remember, it doesn't. When I mention these things, it doesn't make me feel very. Make me feel that great. When just to let you know that when you're listening, it doesn't make me feel great that we're just all going to be walking around in these bodysuits and all we've got left is our sexual organs and our brain. Doesn't sound like the greatest thing in the world, and we've got limiters that stop all our sexual desires and addiction desires. It doesn't sound like the dream state that we could think of, but these are definite concepts that I think would be applied in a lot of examples. And I think obviously if you think of how much addiction can ruin lives and change people's focus, if we could send counter signals for addictive traits, then the potential of the human mind to unlock itself and unlock potential is immense. A lot of philosophers have mentioned this in the past. Socrates has mentioned that once he got to the age of like 50 or something, he didn't have the sexual desire as much, and that was a godsend to him because that was really screwing up his way of thinking. And now he had a lot more of a clearer thought in terms of being a philosopher and things like that. So these are interesting concepts, and it's definitely important to explore these points. Now, I've mentioned before that the brain does have its limitations. It's definitely can't retain information as well as a computer can, and it can't access information as quite as good as a computer can. So we may have, especially if we've got neuroscanners which can scan what the brain is thinking, or we have interconnections between our nerve system and what the brain is thinking. So we may have an interconnected brain, and potentially there is certain parts of the biological brain that are immensely advantageous to keep, whilst there is computer chips, memory, hard drives, cloud storage, and technological parts which are immensely advantageous for the brain as well. But so over time, we could think to ourselves that the brain is getting less biological and becoming more of a computer chip over time. So now, remember, I mentioned that we could create the human operating system over time. So it's fairly it's fairly daunting in terms. But if you could consider that you're still yourself, you're just not feeling pain. You're still walking around in a body with hands, and cosmetically we may make everything look and touch and be as soft as what humans generally are as well. We do obviously have certain elements of what we perceive as beauty. Obviously, we can remodel and reshape ourselves to be a lot more beautiful and attractive, but that sets different standards. So that's really interesting concepts in those points. But if we do have this highly trained body, which is, what's the word for it, is not impulsive and is just always in a thoughtful state going around, it's kind of interesting. And obviously the major thing here is that we're not feeling any pain. So we're pursuing things in the outside world, and we can obviously push ourselves to higher limits. Now that means that we can obviously we can shoot up into space as long as we've got certain sugar packs and things like that, because obviously we might need oxygen just to convert sugars and energy into power for our bodies, but we might be able to just transfer the energy source so that we can go into outer space. I don't know whether our bodies could handle being in a complete vacuum state, even if it was a cybernetic body, but there is interesting elements in that. But there is certain elements of space exploration. We could move and go to different planets, which we could terraform for certain dietary requirements that we need in energy, but this human is not the same human that we're sort of used to right now, and it's a painless human as well, and it's potentially a human which is devoid of a lot of human characteristics of pain avoidance and things like that. There's a lot more things in terms of it can just do things because it wants to. So right, okay, we need to do this thing. I can just throw myself into the fire, but I know that I've got a backup copy of myself, and I can just regenerate and get the body parts again, as long as there's some kind of value in value storage. At some point, I can regenerate myself and a number of things. So I'm thinking very far into the future here in these terms, where we're pretty much every single part of our body is replaced, but obviously the mind and the way that we think is still there. But we've got this highly improved intelligence which can think over a number of things in a short space of time, and we have the potential of having multiple processes, so we can think of not just one thing that we can focus on, but hundreds or thousands or billions of things at the same time. So this is totally different in terms of what we normally can conceive and put into concepts. But the pain element is very important. Now, if we think of ourselves, like, why are we, like, if we remove this pain, what sort of problems can it occur? Now, in a general sense, if we're not feeling any pain, we don't know what sort of damage is being occurred. So it's really interesting in those terms that how do we know that when we create these robots which are going around, how do we know if they're feeling any pain, any emotional pain, particularly when, say, if the brain would have experienced a depressed state because other humans have, or these highly sophisticated humans have ostracized another human, that other human might not feel any pain, and it might just send in certain programs to say, no, you're not feeling any pain, you're not feeling any anguish, you're okay by yourself, and just continue on by itself without feeling any social ostracism and objects like that. So there is a certain balance of play between us feeling pain and not feeling pain. And maybe in terms of where I've mentioned this before about simulations, maybe there is a certain inclination for us to create simulations of people that feel pain and get a certain level of understanding and knowledge for this pain, because it is important for us to strive forward to overcome obstacles, addictions, and impulses, so that we can become more successful in our lives. And if we're obviously going into this direction where we're creating this painless cyborg, then we definitely do have a lot of obstacles which can provide us, won't provide us, which will potentially could lead to our downfall as well. So let's just think of things that have happened in the past, which where we've tried to do eugenics. Now, if Hitler wanted to create his super race, which he thought was actually, this is to do with Friedrich Nietzsche again, but I think he may have misinterpreted him. But he was trying to create his Aryan race, and this Aryan race was these big, massive Germans with big chests, muscular, big jawbones, blonde hair, blue eyes, really tall, fair-skinned, He's done this by certain amounts of eugenics, and he's wiped out every single other race in the known universe. He's really isolated all terms of all of the other genetics, and there's obviously there's not much biodiversity in humans in comparison to what dogs have. So by him applying all of those eugenics, at some point in time in the future, there won't be all the different options available to them, and now you're walking around with all these big Germans, and there's shortages of food, and you actually probably require people with smaller frames, and these big hyper superhuman Germanic people have just been decimated, and leads to the failure of this superhuman race. So if you think sometimes in directions, I'm not sure what this message is, what this theory is coming about, but I guess if things are going in certain directions and everyone is hyper forward in terms of getting to a state of painless feelings, then we could get ourselves into a state of being incapable of change and having less diversity in the way that we think. So the way that we can overcome these problems is to simulate humans again, just so that we can protect these like ultra bots, which are sort of the masters now. Yeah, this is this is crazy theories coming out here now, but I just want to just explore those thought experiments. I'm not stating that this is we're like controlled by ultra bots, but I just want to theorize certain things which can be interesting and are obviously parts which can be explored. I'm really going into science fiction, but it does give us certain areas which we can think and ponder over. And please give a certain level of deduction and questioning when I do mention these things, so that you are not carried away with the fairies. So yeah, there are a number of obstacles to becoming painless. The benefits initially. Now this is the thing with addiction itself. The benefits of being painless initially, and this is very akin to like the drug heroin, where you feel no pain. It's quite nice, and you feel in this endless sea of belongingness and oneness. This might be the same as Oxycontin. Just to not feel any pain is a beautiful, blissful feeling that you could experience. However, over time, you do have this addictive impulse, and it does lead, especially if you are inclined to getting away to the state of your original reality that you're in. This can lead to your decimation, because you are more focused on being painless and painless and painless until all focus is gone, and then you don't really realize who you are anymore. You lose all your identity, and then you are pretty much nothing anymore. And there's a lot of suicide and things like that. So, yeah, where we create this future bot of the into the future, we are creating this painless society. We potentially could be inducing heroin to our bodies without us really knowing, in a disguised sense, in a disguised way. And there are ridiculous amounts. If certain thoughts and feelings are not approached to these, especially a human approach is not applied to these thoughts and feelings, then we could find ourselves in a very dangerous state. Now, I just thought to myself, imagine if what I mentioned was true and these bots were listening into this conversation. Oh, no, these all of these thoughts and ideas have probably just come up from a lot of other things. You can think of the Matrix and another other objective. Objective. Why do people pull out of driveways into you? Right. Anyway, keeping back to reality. Yes. So there are certain warnings out there for people, especially which are practicing into this stuff. It's always important when you are discovering a new technology is to approach things with morality and ethics so that you do not get to a state where you are creating killing fields and eugenics and horrible, immoral things. So, to create a human with no pain has an immense amount of benefits, and also very much so in the short term, but potentially in the long term, it can have an incredible amount of negatives, and it potentially it blends us away from being a human person anymore and becoming more so a non-sensitive machine, which is kind of scary and it is a little bit worrying now. But obviously, this machine will hopefully have a little bit of a theory on arts and love and morality and beauty and things like that. I would hope so, anyway. So, yeah, and the joys and the pleasures of life is to look at beauty and behold it and think, my God, that is amazing. To have that emotional impulse to protecting innocent people and feeling that love and respect. I can't think of a world which you think obviously these are pleasures. Imagine if those pleasures were sort of negated because you're not feeling any pain. You think of this counteract. If you don't feel, if you people always there's another thing I remember people mentioned a lot before. If you don't feel any pain, you're never going to feel any pleasure. So it's very interesting in those respects, and life does. Some people might feel quite depressed all the time, but life does have some amazing benefits, and I choose life in comparison to nothing at all. And I guess I choose to have pain rather than no pain at all, and I choose to have death than to have no life at all. So there is all those objectives that people can think over. Now, if you can think of any other suggestions or any other theories that you can add, or you can counteract, or you can add things to this talk, then I would most welcome it. Thank you very much for your time. For the meantime, we are human beings and we're doing pretty well. Some certain amounts of economic issues happening at the moment. I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but maybe these future bots. But we're okay at the moment. Just keep the emotions intact and stay tuned for another podcast. Thank you. Turn off. Won't turn off. Come on. I don't know why this thing doesn't turn off. Hi there, I'm still there. I don't have the ability to switch off my recorder. This is amazing. All right, I'll say goodbye again. Bye-bye. I think I know what I did wrong. Okay.